Ron Tite is one of my favorite thought leaders, speakers, and he's the author of the book Think, Do, Say. It's on my book list, and I was thrilled when he agreed to speak with me about some of the concepts that he shares in the book and how that can apply to our careers as managers within organizations. So I hope you enjoy the interview. Okay, so welcome to my lemonade stand. Today, I'm really excited to be speaking to Ron Tite. And I'm going to do a quick introduction of Ron. So Ron was actually named one of the top 10 creative Canadians. He's a best-selling author, speaker, producer, and entrepreneur. He's the founder of Church and State, which is a marketing agency which specializes in marketing strategy as well as a content creation company. And Ron speaks to leading organizations about leadership, disruption, branding, and creativity. So Ron has two books. I've read them both. So the first one is called Everyone is an Artist. And quick plug, Ron, because I have a book percolating in the back of my mind about unleashing your inner artist at work. So once that manifests itself, I might want to ping you again to have a conversation about that whole topic around creativity.
Yeah, cool.
But today, what I want to talk about is I want to talk about your book, 2019, Think, Do, Say, which is a great book. It's interesting, as you would expect, a marketing person who specializes in creative content. The way it's laid out in the book is very interesting and fun to read. And I listen to it on Audible, and that is very interesting, sound effects, all that other stuff. But most importantly, Ron is also a very generous and kind human being who was very kind to talk to me before I was writing my second book and to share his feedback, his insights. So I do appreciate that very much. And welcome to my lemonade stand, Ron.
Well, thank you. I'll have a large lemonade to go.
No problem. So I do love the book, and just
Thank
again,
you.
high level, it's about when it says think, do, say for listeners. It's about first thinking about the idea, the concept, then actually doing it before we go out into the marketplace and we say, hey, this is what we do. We have to actually have the material behind us. A lot of the content does speak to organizations and leaders and how they can do that at a large level for the overall organization. But what I want to talk to today is I want to talk to how this translates into managers within organizations and how they can make this concept of think, do, say real for their team members.
Awesome.
So I wanted to kick it off with my first question is around finding purpose, having a larger purpose. So, a lot of people, it's about their title. This is what I do. Then they have their job description, whatever. But the people who are the most fulfilled and enjoying their work are the ones who have a purpose behind it. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about the importance of us really being able to find our purpose as professionals and especially as managers within organizations behind the actual job description.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we should probably do is kind of, establish what it is, because there are so many different versions of purpose that are floating around out there, and some of them, from my perspective, not how I would define it. And certainly from an organizational perspective, and this is where it gets tricky between organization and person, that a lot of organizations are clamping onto purpose that is just based in social cause. So it's like, our purpose is to save the planet. It's like, you make crackers. What? I don't understand like this. Mm-hmm. And that is not purpose. Now, those are things that are important. Yes, of course, social cause, social issue, kind of social progress. Those are all things in how you go about your business, and those are table stakes now. But it's not corporate purpose. Mm-hmm. Like, corporate purpose is a fundamental reason why you're in business in the first place. It is a fundamental belief behind what you do. And for you Simon Sinek fans, I think it's closer into his, why. The start with why. Now, when it gets down to a personal level, what is your personal purpose as a manager? I think it's still in that same zone. It's like, what do you fundamentally believe about your job that goes beyond your job title? So if you're in finance, people go like, my purpose is that, or I believe that finance should be really good with math. And it's like, that's a little bit closely tied to the actual job and the title. What do you fundamentally believe beyond that? And for managers to, I think, clearly establish that and use it to their advantage. I think you need to do a couple of things with those who you work with. One, you need to articulate it. So now when you know what it is, what is yours and how does yours connect to the broader organizational purpose? So if the organizational purpose is, hey, we believe that, we did this once as a consulting assignment for J&J Vision. And it was like, the corporate purpose, we believe that vision is more than seeing, that it's more, or seeing is more than vision, that it's more than that. It's more than the image that you get. And so what did they do to reinforce that? Well, they made a number of investments to broaden the portfolio of going beyond contact lenses, everything. So then when we get into individual managers, we had the head of sales go, this is what I believe. Now, first of all, I also believe in the organizational purpose. But from a sales standpoint, this is what I fundamentally believe about sales. And so we got the CMO to go, this is what I fundamentally believe about marketing. So if you're a CMO or you're a director of marketing or a manager of marketing, what do you fundamentally believe about marketing? Do you believe that marketing is part art and science? Do you believe that marketing is that creativity powers marketing? Do you believe that marketing is about performance and data centricity? Do you believe that marketing is the face of the organization? Like, what do you fundamentally believe about the discipline that your team works on? Mm-hmm. Because if they don't know what you fundamentally believe about it, it's going to be really difficult for them to align their actions behind your beliefs. Mm-hmm. So that's the first thing. What do you believe about the discipline that you work in? Another way to look at it is, what do you believe about the role of a manager? Do you believe that great managers are all about mentoring? Do you believe that managers are all about a great coaching? Do you believe that managers are all about being strict and making sure that people fall in line? Do you believe that managers are all about empowering? Like, what is it do you fundamentally believe about management? So that's the first part. What do you believe? Secondly, what do you not only consciously do to reinforce that belief, but how do you operationalize it? So let's say you think as a manager, your purpose is that management is driven by mentoring. Mentoring is the most important part of management. That's your fundamental belief. Okay, what do you do to reinforce that? You could say, I mentor my people. Really? When and how? When is it in your calendar? How are you operationalizing that so that you ensure that you do it for every single person once a week? Do you do coffees once a quarter and a Slack check-in once a day? Like, what is it that you operationalize? How do you operationalize the actions to reinforcing that? Then the third part is that your viewers and listeners will be like, oh, this is the think, do, say part. Yes, this is the think, do, say part. So what do you fundamentally believe is the think? How do you operationalize your actions to reinforce that belief? Because you will be defined by your actions. And then thirdly, how do you talk about it? How do you get other people on your side? Because true growth comes when other people adopt your ideas and your passions. So if you're a senior manager and you have people who report to you who also have direct reports, they need to share in your purpose. How do you get them on your side to go like, oh yeah, I'm also a manager that believes in the importance of mentorship. So, and how you get other people on your side is how you communicate it. Mm-hmm. So how do you talk about your role as a manager and your fundamental beliefs as a manager and what you do as a manager? How do you talk about it? Do you talk about it through stories? Do you talk about it with catchphrases? Do you talk about it with a daily stand-up meeting where you gather for 5 minutes? Do you talk about it by celebrating those people who have reinforced your fundamental beliefs and who have mentored other people? Do you talk about it by celebrating the people who you've mentored and who have fundamentally changed their behavior to reinforce the purpose of the organization? How do you talk about it? Mm-hmm. When you align those three things, now you have a purpose-driven manager.
So thank you for that. And that, like, again, you did encapsulate exactly the think, do, say on the professional level, on the leader level. And what was I going to say about that in terms of the think, do, say? What I was going to say is although it's great, and there are some fantastic organizations who do that for the organization. They do that alignment, your scorecards, everything, and everybody knows. And I've worked with great organizations who do that. But what I like about what you just described is that even if your organization doesn't do that, as a leader, you can still choose to do that within your team, as long as, again, it has to be in alignment with bigger the bigger mandate of the organization. And you can create that for your team. And that's when you have people who it's like, oh my gosh, everybody loves working, let's say, for the finance department. What
Yeah.
is that about? Because we just feel like we're doing really important work here, and that we're a big contributor to the overall success. And that is huge in terms of people putting in the extra effort, your loyalty, people staying with you and wanting to give more and wanting to grow and stuff like that. So yeah, it is that effort of really giving people purpose. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's what, there's the top two things that drive and fulfillment, employment fulfillment. Number one is compensation. Number two is purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Except in one group.
Which group?
And that's Gen Z.
Oh.
And in Gen Z, they're flipped.
Oh.
In Gen Z, purpose, and this just came out in HBR research about probably 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Gen Z is the only demographic that purpose is more important than pay.
It's interesting that you say that, because I do a lot of work with MBAs at Rotman. And one thing that I noticed, because in my generation, you go to work, you get a job, and you work your way up the ladder, you pay your dues, people treat you like crap on the way up. And then at one day you actually have, the professional collateral to kind of call some of the shots.
Yeah.
So what I found interesting with MBA students today is they're looking for the positive culture. Like, that's number one. Whereas for in my generation, like I said, that was something that you aspire to one day. Great. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting, how important that is. And I'm hoping that that's going to actually drive. I mean, you can't really make a company or a leader be interested, but hopefully they're going to benefit from getting the top talent, because they're going to gravitate towards those organizations. And the ones who are not getting that talent will be like, oh, maybe we need to change. So I'm hoping that's what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah. It also points to just how lucky we are to live here, right? Like that,
Yes.
Some people, are like, I just need a job. Like, I just need to feed my family.
Yes.
And I 100% get that. So we're really fortunate that for some of us who have, been in a position where we could go get other gigs.
Mm-hmm.
You're a manager, you can go be a manager in another place for around the same pay.
Yeah.
And so that's what was interesting about COVID, right? Was COVID made us because we're all in this kind of heads down doing the work, and it's fine, it's okay. We never really questioned ourselves because we were just in that conveyor belt of professional fulfillment. We were just going about our day and doing our things, because you got to get up at this time and leave at this time and go to this location because Timmy's got T-ball at 6, and and then when you stop the automated behavior, now suddenly we're forced to think and prioritize things. Mm-hmm. And we're forced to think about our actions in a completely different way. And we're forced to think about, well, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do this? And we had a sudden thrust in reprioritization of our actions. Mm-hmm. And we had to reprioritize for mental health. We had to reprioritize for our families and for our survival in some cases. We had to reprioritize for social cause and issues that were happening all around us, where we illuminated so many different injustices in the world. And suddenly we're in a location where we're forced to think about those things. And so the mind shift completely shifted. And so it's not like workplaces, obviously the location changed, but it was just that weird change in behavior that forced people to relook at stuff, and people kind of went, I'm not that happy. And it's not like, I don't think it was anything about the pandemic that made them unhappy. I think it was the first time where they questioned whether they were happy.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because pre-pandemic, on a Saturday, I just used to be busy doing stuff. And if you were to ask me now what I used to do, I can't really itemize for you what I used to do. And all of a sudden, I've realized how much I actually enjoy being home, quiet, because never would have had that opportunity to just experience it for such a long period of time. But
Yeah.
yeah, talking about how we do so many things on rote, as opposed to taking the time to actually make the conscious decision about what our choices are.
Yeah.
So,
There's a great example of um so Monopoly,
mhm,
the board game Monopoly, which for years is like the most stereotypical version of capitalism.
mhm.
And for years, remember those community chess cards you get, and they would say things like, you just won a beauty pageant, collect $200, and your sister would go, beauty, whatever. Um, well, in September of 2021, Monopoly took a step back, and Monopoly said, "Oh, maybe this isn't appropriate anymore." And so now, if you buy Monopoly as of September of 2021, now those cards say things like, "You just shopped locally, collect $200." And "You
Oh,
just volunteered at a charity, collect $200." The
mhm.
very kind of contribution of business to society, and so therefore our personal contributions to business, who is contributing to society, has fundamentally shifted to being a purpose first. The shareholder value era of business is over. It is over. We've now entered the purpose era. The Jack Welch and all the people who followed that kind of ideology of really putting the shareholder primacy being the only and important person. And now the Business Roundtable kind of came out and said, no, it's not just the shareholder, but it's shareholders, it's customers, it's employees, it's partners, and it's the communities in which we operate. So that shift at a corporate level has fundamentally switched, and it's being kind of driven from the bottom as well,
Mhm.
of people saying this is what we want out of our jobs, and so therefore it's effective. And it's been driven by the top down, understanding that it's no longer a moral imperative, it's a business imperative.
Mhm.
The BlackRock, Larry Fink, the BlackRock CEO, came out in 2019 or 2018 with a letter said something to the tune of, "If you're not contributing to your community, we have no interest in doing business with you."
Wow.
That's a
Mhm.
huge shift.
Yep. I could talk for hours about that whole shareholder primacy. But the bottom line to that is, as much as it's now seen as being a business imperative, in my opinion, it always actually does benefit the shareholder, because if you have happy employees who are engaged and love working there and love
Yes.
talking about your company to all their friends and family, and you have clients who love you too and love buying your product and talk by default. So the shareholder primacy doesn't need to be. It's kind of like going on the scale every day. No, if you're eating well and you're exercising, the scale kind of takes care of
Yeah.
itself, sort of thing, right?
That is a great point, because when I talk about that, people are like, "So what is this, recreational business?" Like, no, we all know we're here for a specific reason, but it's about focus. If you only focus on delivering shareholder value, you will never deliver it. You'll never deliver it. But if you
Mm-hmm.
focus on other things, if you focus on being a purpose-led organization who prioritizes specific actions that reinforce that purpose, and use that for growth, you will deliver shareholder value. It's
Mm-hmm.
just about focus.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Absolutely.
great point.
Yes. So, and I wanted to talk about, so the thinking, although you just did the example of like where we had a time to pause during the pandemic and really, reflect, not just as individuals, but also organizations did that as well.
Yeah.
But generally, I find that because if you, and I know that you're familiar with the whole concept, like you take the whole leadership team off on an offsite and let's just come
Yeah.
up with our values and our brand kind of thing, right? So the thinking, in some senses, is not that hard. I think the saying is quite easy because, especially with social media, you could say whatever you want every single day. But really, where the rubber hits the road, so to speak, is the do, right?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say, again, back to the professional brand, and you touched on it as well when you were talking about how leaders could do that, how important it is to be doing the do part. So I think we should embrace failure and what, yes, but what do you do when people fail? And I'll really quickly share, one of the great managers I had. I did this epic fail. I hired this person that, anyways, it didn't work out in a very short period of time, and it was one of my first people management roles, and I felt very devastated that, oh my gosh. And the first thing that my manager did when I came in the door, and I looked like, like I'd lost my puppy, ran away, my ice cream cone, like I was at, what's that? And he's like, first of all, he said, listen, kid, if you're plan to be in this for the long haul, you need to get comfortable with this stuff, learn from it, and then shake it off and move on. And then he proceeded to tell me 2 or 3 completely hilarious stories about screw ups that he had when he was. And then it's like, okay, so now let's dissect this. What are we going to do? And we move on. And I thought, what a great example of that whole learning from failure and moving on. And it never came up again. So again, back to, I know so many leaders who talk about we're an innovative organization. We are good about failure. And in those groups, the worst thing you could ever do is make a mistake.
Yeah.
And everybody knows it, right? So I wanted to just stress how important it is to walk the talk, because nobody cares about your brand or what you say if you don't do it on a daily basis, right?
Yeah, you can be focused by your purpose and guided by your purpose, but know that you will be defined by your actions.
Yes. Yes.
And so either those actions reinforce that sense of purpose or they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, well, then that's what's going to define your, quote unquote personal brand. That's the thing that it is the most difficult. It's often the intellectually the easiest, right? Oh, I just do these 5 things. It's like, yeah. Okay. So intellectually it's the easiest, but logistically and realistically, it's the most difficult to prioritize things, to actually follow through, to do those things that you need to do. Mm-hmm. And some people are just they're just machines at it. Other people are people who pride themselves in the do, but those do's aren't strategically aligned with the organization. They're the human version of a sweatshop, right? They're just running around like a chicken with their head cut off, doing. They're the people who define themselves by the number of hours they work, not the contribution of those hours. Mm-hmm. They're the people who constantly talk about working late. But the reality is, if those actions aren't aligned with everybody else in the room, the whispers in the hallway, they're about you. They are about you.
Yes, absolutely. So again, the importance of the fact, making that effort, because of course you have so many competing priorities, issues are going on. It is very hard to say, no, I'm going to set aside this coaching time because I think that coaching is really critical. So it does take a lot of discipline. Yeah. But again, it's about putting your actions behind your words. And I just want to wrap up.
But there was a point there where you said, beyond of people go away to an offsite to kind of come up with their values and stuff, which I think is again, it points to that such a great attempt. The objective is right, that we're going to go away and we're going to collect and clearly articulate what we fundamentally believe in and what we stand for and how we go about our business. That's really, really important. But the reality is, what comes out of that session is that they come up with a deck and they create they go, we're going to have pace. Those are our values: performance, accountability, creativity, everywhere. And then they go, and then they hire a marathon runner to, quote unquote, set the pace. And then they came up with great posters and a PowerPoint deck that talk about their values. And they put a page on the website that say about our values and all this. The reality is, I should not read your values. I should experience your values.
Totally.
And the only way that I can experience your values is not only articulating what they are to your team of people, but understanding that it is their actions where you experience the values. So it's aligning your personal actions with those values. Otherwise, what a waste.
Yeah. And also there's what do you call it? People just clue out, right? It's oh yeah, whatever. Whatever. The values are just meaningless, as opposed to, well, can you share a couple of examples of how, employees are first, and having an employee who can say, yeah, well, there's this and there's this and there's this and that's when it's okay, this is real, because people can point to things that happen on a regular basis, not the once a year employee appreciation lunch, but things that happen on a weekly, monthly basis.
Yeah. We just had a global client who we were doing a bunch of strategy work for. And I think they had 26 values. And we're like, it might be easier to say what values you don't have than to say the values you do have.
But that would be one value for every letter in the alphabet,
Yeah,
typically.
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Our values are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Yeah, totally.
So, and I just wanted to wrap up by touching on one of the final things around the front line. And there's a
Yeah.
great analogy in the book that you share about an experience you had with a frontline employee named Adrian out in BC. And I just wanted you to kind of just share that story, because I think it's so important for us, no matter where we are in the organization, to understand that our frontline buying into and feeling like they're a meaningful part of the organization is so important, because they are actually the organization's face to our clients. They don't know who the director of finance is or who the
Right.
compliance officer is, but they know the person that they interact with on a regular basis. So I was hoping that you were good to share that story about Adrian.
Yeah. So Adrian, I was doing some speaking and stuff out in some speaking, out in an otter co-op, which is in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and south of Vancouver. And I was out there meeting with frontline employees. I'm talking, deli counter clerks and grocery store cashiers and gas station attendants. And Adrian was a gas station attendant at Otter Co-op. And I was there to say, like, look, your taglines, you're at home here. That's the tagline. That's the promise to everybody. So what can you do as a frontline employee to deliver on that, to deliver and make people feel at home? If that's what they're being promised, how can you deliver it? And Adrian said, I found it really difficult because I'm in the Langley. My station is in Langley, and Langley is home to a massive South Asian population. She's like, I don't speak the language for most people that come in. And I found it really difficult to make people feel at home when I couldn't connect with them because I didn't speak their language. So Adrian, on her own time and on her own dime, went out and learned Punjabi. And I thought that was just incredible that she shared the purpose of the organization, that it's about local, making people feel at home. She aligned her actions to reinforce that, went out and learned Punjabi, and then she talked about it. And so how we talk about it is really critical. So how did she talk about it? Well, she actually used the language and communicated with the language that they were using. And that makes it way easier for people to connect to your passions and your ideas. And man, I don't know that I've ever been more inspired. I've met a ton of CEOs, and I don't know that I've ever been more inspired than meeting Adrian, who was, I think at that time, a part-timer.
Mm-hmm.
Now that says a lot about her. What's that?
A part-timer as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it says a lot about Adrian. It also says a heck of a lot about her leader, the leaders of the organization. And the CEO there is a guy named Jack Nicholson, not that Jack, a different Jack, who is not only a wonderful human being, but who was also voted like Entrepreneur of the Year by EY in the BC region. And this, he gets it. He not only clearly articulated what the purpose and values of the organization was, but he supported Adrian and inspired her to kind of take matters into her own hands. And lo and behold, her behavior, surprise, surprise, were in line with the values of the organization.
And I'm sure also her fulfillment in her role and feeling like she had a bigger purpose and that it made a difference if she got up that morning and went to work was all there for her as well, which is, the engagement and fulfillment and the purpose that we were talking about earlier when you're talking about with Gen Z, where that's so important. That's where it comes from. People feeling that they're
totally
participants.
Yeah. And there's something we often say with clients that CX isn't possible without EX. And everyone talks about client experience, customer experience, CX. CX doesn't happen without EX, employee experience. Mm-hmm. Now, for the middle managers out there, please know this. Everybody thinks employee experience is the domain, is the purview of senior management. That's BS. It's not. Roger Martin's got this great definition about culture, that culture is the inner playbook that says this is how we do things around here.
Mm.
And in no organization that I've ever met has that ever been dictated by senior management.
Mm.
That culture and employee experience is dictated by middle management and colleagues. Can you trust these people? Are they nice people? Do you enjoy working with these people? Do they live up to their word kind of people? Now, sure, senior management can put things in place like dental benefits and flex time and back to office policy, all that kind of stuff. Sure. So it's not exclusively outside of their realm of responsibility, but for the most part, I think EX is dictated by you and your colleagues.
Yeah, it was the day-to-day, right?
Yeah.
What happens every single day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So anyways, well, Ron, thank you. This was awesome, as I expected that it would be. So I just want to
This
remind
lemonade is amazing, by the way. I love it.
I want to just remind you, the name of the book is Think, Do, Say. So you could get it on everywhere that you buy books, and it's on Audible. And then the other book, just to mention it as well, is Everyone is an Artist. And this is a really good one as well about creativity in the business process. So thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Dion. And thanks for everybody out there for watching and listening.
Thanks.
If you enjoyed that interview, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, My Lemonade Stand. You can also stream it off of your favorite podcast streaming platform. Looking forward to seeing you next time.